Joining me here from Washington is Vali Nasr, Professor of Middle East Studies and International Affairs at Johns Hopkins University. He's also a leading voice on Iran and the author of the book, Iran's Grand Strategy, A Political History. Professor, welcome to the program. What do you make of these latest talks? It sounds like they're going to continue on later next week. What's going to happen if there's no progress in these negotiations between the Iranians and the Europeans?
Well, they're running against a deadline, which is in October, when the snapback sanctions will be invoked by the Europeans, because if they don't do it by then, they lose the ability to do it. And they have put a line down that either there will be a deal in place or they're going to invoke it. So Iranians and the Europeans are talking together, but unless Iran and the United States meet and progress towards a deal, and the United States puts pressure on the Europeans, telling them to not invoke the snapback sanctions because there is progress, more than likely those sanctions would be reinvoked in October.
Professor, how likely are you, I want to get to the United States and Iran in a moment, but how likely are UN sanctions on Iran with Russia and China having veto power on the UN Security Council?
Well, it's going to be complicated, and it depends on how the Security Council moves along. According to the rules of the JCPOA, that Iran is still a signatory to it, and the Europeans are a signatory to it, any member of that deal can essentially invoke those sanctions at the United Nations. So England and France can do so. And Russia and China could perhaps use mechanisms within the Security Council to prevent it from going forward, delay it, but they cannot take away the right to snap back sanctions, which was written in those deals that allows the Europeans to do it.
Professor, Iran, you know this very well, is one of the most sanctioned countries in the world, certainly has created a lot of hardships for the Iranian people, for Iran's economy. What is their intended objective? Have they been an effective tool for the Western world?
No, as you mentioned, the only thing they've been effective at is to impoverish the Iranian people, to create poverty, to basically debase the Iranian middle class, and to create hardship for Iranians whom the Westerners claim to be in support of. It has not changed Iran's policies. It has trying to pressure Iran into giving up its nuclear program or to changing its policies has not worked. And ultimately, Iran is under so much sanctions that there is very little more sanctions that can be imposed on the country. And on the other hand, there is no real serious carrot of sanctions lifting that would provide an incentive for Iran to actually behave differently.
Is a new nuclear agreement with the United States, Professor, even possible after June's Israeli and U.S. attacks on Iran? I mean, there was already such great distrust between these two countries, and whatever that was left, has that pretty much been destroyed?
Iran has enough of a nuclear program to worry the United States and the Europeans. Otherwise, there would be no question of reimposing sanctions unless they went back to the talks. So yes, Iran is weakened, its program is much smaller, but it's still enough of it is there to be an incentive for the Europeans to put pressure on Iran. There's always possible to have a deal, although now it's a much taller order because of the lack of trust, as you mentioned, because the United States allowed Israel to attack Iran in the middle of the negotiations process last time, and also because the United States once signed a deal and then walked away from a deal. Now, all of these make it more difficult, but I don't think it makes it impossible, because neither does Iran want war with the United States, nor does the United States want war with Iran. And the United States still wants to resolve Iran's nuclear program. So if that resolution is not going to come through war, it has to come through diplomacy. And at this moment in time, there are possibilities of finding at least a framework around which the two sides can talk. But the United States and Iran have been talking to each other, I think, through back channels, but they haven't come to an agreement as to how they would frame the next phase of the negotiations.
Donald Trump has repeatedly said Iran's nuclear sites were obliterated in those military attacks back in June. Professor Nasr, what is your sense on where Iran's nuclear program stands today?
Well, we don't know how much of it was destroyed unless there is verification by International Atomic Energy Association, and international bodies can go in. At least Europeans and Americans will not be satisfied with the word obliterate unless they can verify that for themselves. So they don't know really how much was destroyed. They don't know what happened to the stockpile of about 400 kilograms of highly enriched uranium that Iran had. And also they know that Iran has the know-how to rebuild the program. So yes, it will not get to where it was before the bombing very quickly, but within a 2 to 3 year time period, it could significantly build back the program. So Iran's program was severely damaged, but it's not dead. And that's exactly why Europe is pushing for Iran to go back to the table in order to negotiate some kind of a containment and limit on that program.
Is it your sense that this conflict is actually over, or are we going to see another Israeli-U.S. attack on Iran and its nuclear programs? I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu has certainly made no secret of his, shall we say, obsession with Iran, and he continues to say Tehran poses an existential threat to Israel.
I think the chances of resumption of war are quite high, particularly if Iran and the United States don't engage in a diplomatic process which could guarantee a ceasefire in the short term while they're talking. And the reason is that despite all the damage that Iran suffered in the last round of the war, Israel really did not achieve its maximal war aims with Iran. It did not force the toppling of the Islamic Republic despite the killing of many of its leaders, and it did not fully destroy Iran's nuclear program. And it might be worried that the more time that Iran has, it might build an air defense system, it may get help from China or Russia to do so, and it may regroup and rebuild. And therefore, Israel essentially sees that it started the war, but it didn't really conclude the war last time around. And given the way in which Israel has dealt with Syria, with Lebanon, with threats of this sort, which is to repeatedly go back and use military force to so-called mow the lawn, that he would want to do so with Iran as well, and he want to do so quickly. So we're still in a period of danger that we may end up back at war.
Professor Nasr, you've written a book. You're considered a leading voice on Iran. If the Trump administration came to you and said, Professor Vali Nasr, we need your wisdom, we need your advice, what is the best way to approach Iran and deal with the Iranian government moving forward in a way that would satisfy them and would satisfy us? What would you tell the Trump administration?
Well, I would say that if the Trump administration does not want to end up in a war with Iran, and it really wants to focus on economic development in the Gulf and wants to focus on larger issues around the world and free itself of the Middle East, it has to be serious about diplomacy with Iran. So step one is to actually come up with a diplomatic process that is credible and is clear. And it has to have patience to build trust with Iran. And it has to arrive at a deal that it's willing to abide by, and that Iran is willing to abide by, and use that as a base step to bring at least the first level of stability to the situation in the Middle East. And then on the basis of that, you could build going forward. I don't think the logic of a nuclear deal is impossible. It's fairly clear that the West wants a verifiable, limited Iranian program that is open to intrusive international inspection. And Iranians are willing perhaps to agree to that, and you can negotiate about the details. But if the United States insists on zero nuclear program in Iran, I don't think there's a diplomatic path forward, and the United States may find itself in a conflict that it didn't want in the region.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Professor Vali Nasr, pleasure to have you on, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.